happy to help you. Thank you.
Thanks to all the speakers. We're going to break at 1 for lunch, which doesn't leave us a lot of time. Bill, one of the glories of being the board chair for my organization is he gets to be passing around a microphone. So if any of you have any questions, but as that, it should be on. As we get to that, do any of the panelists, well, first of all, I was wondering if you guys are going to do some sort of smackdown on which the greatest economic development opportunity in the entire universe is, whether it's Victor or Driggs. Oh, Teutonia, okay. Perfect. But if any of you on the panel have any comments about anything you've heard, and then we'll start asking some questions, taking some questions from the audience. Any reactions up here? Question there.
Thank you, Paul Hansen. I wanted to thank all the panelists, but especially Mike and Kate. You know, you're running big organizations. I happen to know that Mike's dedicated almost full time at times to his task. I suspect Kate has as well. So thank you very much. That's a huge gift for our community. My question is more for Bob and Mark. We have one school district, we have one hospital district, we have two governments for a community of 23,000 people. What's the potential or the advantages of a merger of town and county? Would there be synergies, or is it just as well the way it is?
Yeah, well, I get along great with everyone in town, so fine by me. But I think there's probably some technicalities that need to be considered. I'll let Bob cover those a little bit.
Good handoff.
That's an old mountain guide for you. For a number of years when Mark Barron was the mayor, that consolidation of town and county government was the town's top priority. There is duplication of effort, whether it's law enforcement, finance, administration, whatever. We took a number of runs at the enabling legislation that would allow us to do it. And basically we went down to the Capitol and beat our heads up against the wall. It sounds good in the Capitol, but we got nowhere. So what the town and county have done as a practical matter is we're doing what's called functional consolidation, where we have 5 departments that we fund jointly and operate jointly. And most recently, the county, our planning director, Tyler Sinclair, is being contracted with the county so that there is one planning director for both of the agencies. But so, Paul, it's a prohibition at the state level. There is very little appetite at the state level. What we tried to do was get enabling legislation that would allow a vote. And if that vote passed, there would be a consolidation. There would be a committee that would basically structure how the government would be structured. How many commissioners, what are the districts, who's the chief operating officer. Then that would have been put to a vote of the people. And then there would have been phased implementation. But that got nowhere in Cheyenne.
And by the way, I truly hope everyone out there recognized the tongue-in-cheekness of a lot of my comments. I absolutely want to recognize the county staff and employees, especially just a little bit the planning staff there, but they are incredibly hard workers, and I absolutely applaud all of their work.
Is this working? Okay. I am wondering about HUD. I don't really know who to direct the question to. We did a lot of work, I know, with the HUD grants and came up with a lot of projects, ideas for projects. Has that evolved into anything, and has there been any more work with the HUD funding?
I'm not intimately familiar with the HUD regulations. I know we have a couple of tax credit projects that were built, one built by the Housing Authority, and then the HUD funding supplements housing at Brandy Chase, Pioneer, Homestead, I believe. But we haven't done a lot with HUD, and I'm not sure if that's just because of the cost of housing or what the income requirements are. That would be something that maybe Ann Hayden or April, who's not here, could answer.
Shannon might be referring to the HUD grant for sustainable communities that was granted to this region, essentially. One of the biggest projects that came out of that was a model code for land use code for this region. So the region's Teton County, Idaho, Teton County, Wyoming, and Fremont County, Idaho, Madison County, Idaho. So that's kind of one of our Census Bureau meta population areas. I'm not sure exactly what they call it, but there was a model code written by Code Studio that I think both the town of Jackson and Teton County, Wyoming, and Idaho had kind of access to that, and it was developed based on what was going on in our region, really meant to help Teton County, Idaho in particular, adopt a new land use code. And there's several other projects that came out of that grant money. But I'll just update you really quick from the county perspective on where we are with the land use code. It's not a pretty place. It's we got the draft model code from Code Studio about 2 years ago, and our Planning and Zoning Commission has been working on it with our former planning administrator, who's no longer with us, for 2 years. And they presented a draft for a public hearing in October and got a lot of negative feedback, even though they felt many of the members felt very confident that because it was a diverse board working on the new draft land use code, that it would go over well with the community because they themselves had to make a lot of compromise, yet they didn't really involve the community in the process. So what ended up happening is it became a very big political issue during the election, lots of misinformation about it, some of which was, that the commission, the present commission at the time was pushing it forward before the election, which wasn't true. But that's the politics of it. Where we're at right now is we have a draft. It's still in the hands of the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's based on a lot of the work that Code Studio did. And it's a different kind of code that is character-based zoning, which is new and unique, I think, for our area. And we're just going to wait and hopefully get some technical assistance in reviewing it, and then it'll come to the Board of County Commissioners when the Planning and Zoning Commission is ready to pass it forward. I'm going to let Hiram speak because they have implemented new land use codes in both Driggs and Victor.
Thank you, Cindy. That HUD consortium project was a phenomenal collaboration of many organizations, many government entities, and some good recommendations came out of it. I think your question is, where are we going beyond the report? Is it just shelf help, or is it going to really be a product that we can build on? And Cindy addressed the county's concerns. The city of Driggs, the city of Victor have both adopted their form-based codes based on those recommendations. Another element of that HUD project was related to transportation. It identified regional transit, basically the missing links in our regional transit picture. Part of, our efforts to work with START and improve the commuter routes that are needed, that is drawn out of that, but there's still a major piece that we have not been able to address, and that is some of the regional links, for example, from Rexburg, which is a major transportation hub, to Driggs. That link, there is no link there. And there are people who come from a place in the world where they are accustomed to hopping on a bus and being able to get to wherever they want to go. It has occurred that people arrive in Rexburg thinking they can get from Rexburg to Driggs and find that they cannot because there is not a link there. So we're working on those things. But that was a phenomenal example of intergovernmental cooperation funded by the Housing and Urban Development Agency.
Just to add to that, one of the recommendations that came out of that HUD Greater Yellowstone Coalition Regional Sustainability Grant was the recommendation of a housing authority in Teton Valley. And so we've been working through that with the cities and the county. The political environment at the county has changed, so it remains to be seen if the county will be moving forward as part of that housing authority, but the cities of Driggs and Victor are prepared to move forward with that one way or another. And sooner than later, the city of Driggs actually has a couple of projects that are dependent on a housing authority being in existence, so time is of the essence on that front. With respect to Victor, the implementation of that form-based model code, while we acknowledged when we approved it that it was not 100% ready, that it was probably closer to 90%, and that we would continue to make tweaks as instances arise that identified areas for improvement, and we've continued to do that. The implementation of that code has really cleared the waters for landowners in the city of Victor and potential developers to know what they can do by right now. It's taken a lot of the subjectivity out of the planning review process and made it very clear to landowners, if you are zoned a certain way, here are the things that you can do by right without any without any subjective restriction. Certainly rezone applications get reviewed and considered based on their merits, so that, and each of those is on their own merits. There's no precedent set by any kind of rezone decisions that are made. But what it has resulted in is a significant influx of development, mostly on the residential front, and in Victor, where we were kind of a city of single-family homes and subdivisions just filled with single-family homes. The majority of the new development that we're seeing is multifamily, higher density, within about a half a mile of our Main Street core, which was a concept that really came out of the county's comprehensive planning update 4 or 5 years ago, was to concentrate growth in the city cores, to preserve our open space, and a lot of those concepts I think have been discussed at length over here in Teton County, Wyoming as well. But most of that new development is either apartments, townhomes, condos, cottage courts, that kind of smaller footprint, higher density development that will build up our economic foundation in the city of Victor.